Now we'll take a look at the processes behind the generation, certification, and the sale of SRCs. First, some basic facts. DOE is the sole SRC certifying authority and can certify 1 to 3 years worth of SRCs from a project at a time. All the retention capacity for SRCs must be located in the district. And SRCs can be generated from voluntarily installed green infrastructure projects or from retention achieved above the stormwater retention volume for a regulated project. Now, we'll go over what needs to be included in your application to certify SRCs. Most importantly, your project needs to have SRC eligibility. You can find this in your stormwater management plan in the surface and groundwater system. The project needs to have submitted an approved as-built document. The project needs to have had its final construction inspection within the last 3 years. And it needs to have passed a maintenance inspection within the last 6 months. This inspection can be conducted by DOE personnel or through submitting a self-inspection, self-reporting form that has then been reviewed and approved by DOE. The final inspection, which was mentioned previously, that is conducted upon a project's completion, can be used for this purpose if it was less than 6 months ago. Otherwise, a new inspection needs to be done. And lastly, there needs to be a maintenance document submitted with the certification application. And there's some important things that we need to see in this document. First, we need to see that this maintenance document, or perhaps maybe it's a maintenance contract with a third party, the dates that are covered for that contract overlap or cover the entire certification period. Next, we need to see a list of maintenance tasks for the green infrastructure listed in your stormwater management plan. And you can find a convenient reference in Chapter 3 of DOE's Stormwater Guidebook, which outlines suggested maintenance tasks for each category of green infrastructure. Next, we need to see evidence that the person or company performing the maintenance has the experience or expertise to do so. And the key thing here is that a standard landscaping company that cuts lawns or trims trees often is not experienced with the necessary practices needed to maintain large-scale green infrastructure. And finally, a simple acknowledgement that acknowledges that if a BMP fails subsequent inspection conducted during the certification period, that some SRCs might be retired, or in other words, revoked. So once you have everything ready, you'll submit the application through the surface and groundwater system. So in this scenario, the example project is constructed, certifies SRCs for 3 years, and then recertifies for another 3 years. The project gets its stormwater management plan with SRC eligibility approved and undergoes construction, and gets its final DOE construction inspection. Sometime within 6 months after that, they apply to certify SRCs so that they can use their final construction inspection as the maintenance inspection required for the certification application. The application gets approved for 3 years. Within the last 6 months of that first certification period, they get another DOE inspection and apply to recertify their SRCs. At the end of their certification period, their application is approved and they are able to certify for another 3 years. The risk of repetition, here's another example of the certification cycles. This site is eligible for 1,000 SRCs per year, and they've chosen to certify their SRCs for 3 years at a time. Once their certification is approved, The site owner will receive 3,000 SRCs at the beginning of the 3-year period. For 3 years, if they recertify, they'll receive 3,000 additional SRCs at the beginning of their second certification period. And so on and so forth. They'll receive an additional 3,000 SRCs at the beginning of their third certification cycle. Each SRC has a unique serial number that we use to track where it was generated and where it's used. It contains the date at the beginning of the certification period, the major and the sub-drainage areas, stormwater management plan number, and the individual gallons. For example, 1,000 SRCs were certified on January 1, 2022. The first one starts with 01 and goes to 1,000. The serial numbers will change slightly every year that they are recertified. As you can see, the dates change here for each year of certification. For many projects, the whole point of SRCs is to sell them. So let's look at how that sales process works. When buying SRCs, the terms of the transfer are negotiated between the buyer and the seller. DOE is not part of those negotiations. However, we do have a template contract available on our website at doee.dc.gov/SRC. Once the terms are agreed on between the buyer and the seller will submit a notice to DOE that they want to transfer the ownership of those SRCs to the buyer. Once DOE confirms the transfer, the SRCs will now be owned by the buyer. DOE tracks the price information for transfers, like price per SRC, total sale price, the total number of SRCs transferred, and makes that information public. But no project information or contact information is ever published. Let's go over what an SRC transaction might look like and the players involved. Condo developed in the combined sewer system is going through the review process and has 10,000 gallon stormwater retention volume. Instead of installing enough green infrastructure to retain all of their requirements on site, they install enough green infrastructure on site to retain 7,000 gallons and decide to utilize the Offv option for the remaining 3,000 gallons. This helps keep space free on the property for amenities, such as having a rooftop patio or a pool instead of a green roof, or extra parking spaces in the parking garage instead of a cistern. This condo represents the demand side of the marketplace. An SRC aggregator or seller partners with the local nonprofit in the MS4 sewer area. They install a voluntary green infrastructure practice that can retain 6,000 gallons. And they apply to certify SRCs for 3 years. They then generate 3 years worth of SRCs at once for a total of 8,000 SRCs. And this represents the supply in the market. The condo purchases those 18,000 SRCs to meet their 3,000 gallon Offv requirement for 6 years at once.